It is, needless to say, an honor and a privilege to be invited to speak in the Pauling Lecture Series, and a particular privilege to be able to do so today on the 50th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations, as the contours of a new world order were being constructed from the ashes of the most terrible single catastrophe of human history. There were conflicting visions at the time of what the new world order of the day should be, and they're still highly relevant. One view was that of the United Nations, which is now possibly facing its demise. The second was a view that is sometimes called realism in international relations theory, which was critical of the utopianism that accompanied the founding of the United Nations. The realist vision was articulated with great clarity 50 years ago by one of the most respected and important statesmen of the 20th century, Winston Churchill, who was speaking for the victors, one of the big three. He explained that, I'm quoting him now, "The government of the world must be entrusted to the satisfied nations who wish nothing more for themselves than what they have. Our power placed us above the rest. We are like rich men dwelling in peace within their habitations, and we must keep the hungry nations under control, or else there will be danger." Earlier in the century, at the peak of British power before World War I, Churchill had outlined this realistic vision more fully, this time in secret, in a British cabinet meetings, records of which have recently been released after quite a few years, apparently considered rather sensitive. He said, "We are not a young people with an innocent record and a scanty inheritance. We have engrossed to ourselves an altogether disproportionate share of the wealth and traffic of the world. We have got all we want in territory, but our claim to be left in the unmolested enjoyment of vast and splendid possessions, mainly acquired by violence, largely maintained by force, often seems less reasonable to others than to us. So we have to teach them regular lessons in reasonableness." This was part of a call for expanding the military budget. I should say a sanitized version of that did appear in his writings, but with a very different tone. I might add, it'd be only fair to add, that the more humane among the conquerors didn't find those measures so reasonable. For example, Adam Smith, who bitterly condemned what he called the savage injustice of the Europeans, who he saw very clearly 200 years ago were brutally creating the first world, third world divide that is now so dramatic and was far less so at the time. Well, Adam Smith was a figure of the Enlightenment, pre-capitalist, anti-capitalist in fundamental ways, and he was also smart enough to detect the fundamental illusions of the realist picture that Churchill so eloquently articulated. The first is that, contrary to the Churchillian version, the rich men enjoying their ample habitations are never satisfied. Rather, they will follow what Adam Smith called the vile maxim of the masters of mankind, all for ourselves and nothing for anyone else. The second and more crucial point is that the we who are enjoying their vast and splendid possessions were not the people of England, nor of France, nor the United States, nor other imperial powers, except occasionally by accident. Rather, continuing in his words, the principal architects of state policy design it to ensure that their own interests are most peculiarly attended to, however grievous the impact on others, including the people of their own country. That's a very valid comment. In his day, the principal architects were the merchants and manufacturers of England, as he explained. Today, it's the huge transnational corporations and financial institutions that dominate the domestic economy and, in fact, the international economy, and hence its politics as well. Well, to correct the realist vision with Adam Smith's insights, it comes out like this. The rich men of the rich societies will pursue their vile maxim, seeking to expand their vast and splendid possessions that they have gained by violence and hold by force, resorting to savage injustice when necessary, so that and those who do not will simply fall by the wayside. The lot of the vast majority of people, including those of their own countries, is simply to serve and suffer. Well, that's the realist vision. The other vision of world order, the competing one 50 years ago, was the vision of the United Nations, or at least the rhetoric that accompanied its founding, which I won't review because you're engulfed in a flood of such pronouncements and it's unnecessary to repeat them. As to which of the conflicting visions prevailed, history has provided a rather clear and unflattering answer. Now, there were and are, of course, plenty of people deeply committed to the vision of the rhetoric that accompanied the United Nations then and now, and who sought to make it more than mere rhetoric. That includes, I suppose, the vast majority of the population of the world, which is why reality has to be masked in so much secrecy and deceit. It's why the occasional honest comment, such as Churchill's before the First World War, has to be concealed from the population for almost a century in this case. And I think it'll be a long time before they study it in British schools. Those who wanted to make the reality closer to the rhetoric included also prominent individuals, Linus and Helen Pauling ranking high among them, but real power has always resided elsewhere. Well, in the United States, attitudes toward the United Nations have oscillated over the years from great praise to utter contempt. I'll return to that at the end, suggesting a rather simple realist principle that I think accounts for the variations. But first, let's look at the failures and flaws of the United Nations that have caused these changes in attitudes towards it.